Good morning, afternoon, evening. Well, here we are. The course is just about over. So what I wanted to do was to give us kind of a sense of the overall. Remind ourselves what it is we've been looking at for, the last number of weeks. So let me remind you how the course was organized. We started with, some introductory stuff on critical thinking, if you recall. We discussed the Gladiator movie, Parmenides, the Euthyphro. Then we looked at metaphysics. And metaphysics asked the question, what is? Then after metaphysics, we looked at epistemology. And epistemology asked the question, what is true? Then we looked at ethics. And ethics, for the most part, asked the question, what is truly good? And then finally, we looked at politics. And politics looks at what is truly good for the whole. Now, in all of these, we looked at different perspectives, right? So metaphysics, we looked at an A and B. Epistemology, we looked at an A and B, right? This one was idealism, materialism, rationalism, empiricism. Ethics, we looked at A, B, and C. And likely also in politics, we had an A, B, and C. So what's the point of this? Well, each of these questions builds on itself, right? So here we're asking what is, which might strike us as odd, and perhaps when we first started looking at this section, it might have kind of put you off a little bit in terms of, well, what in God's name, reality as substance and form and idea. It might be difficult to swallow. However, you'll never know what's true, of course, unless you understand the is. Now, at the end of the day, right, when we're talking about epistemology, again, it seems we could live our lives without ever understanding epistemology. But here, we could almost say that this is theory, and this is practice. Because here, if you don't really have much of an opinion on what is real or what is true, you can still live your life and you're still going to do what's good, right? So, whether you're, whether you're Hugh Hefner or whether you're Mother Teresa or whether you're a middle class, career person, we're all going to have a concept of good. And in the practical world, we will make decisions toward that understanding of good. But here's where philosophy comes in. Well, what if we don't know what true is? So if we start here, if this is our starting point, we're kind of lost in a way, because without this other stuff up here, we're really not sure if, in fact, what we think is good is good. In fact, we tend to probably assume that good is either what our cultures and parents have kind of told us is good, or what's pleasurable, right? And so you get, for instance, in the United States today, this sense that whatever satisfies my desires instantly is good, right? So this instant gratification kind of thing. But then, of course, everybody has their politics, right? But the thing is, and again, an important philosophical aspect is, well, we're talking about for the whole, right? Because we're saying good. So I might say to myself, okay, I believe in this party because I believe it's good for me, right? And most people think of politics in terms of me, right? So I'll vote for this party because they promised me this. I'll vote for that party because they promised me that. But the thing is, well, what's good for the whole, right? Because there's more in the republic than just me. So notice we're still in the position where the key factor from this branch goes back to this branch. So good is dependent on true, and good for the whole. If we're going to organize the whole of society, well, we have to know what that ultimate good is. Not just a good that I assume, not a good in terms of my opinion. Hence, when we look at Aristotle, he went all the way back to what is human function. Because we often don't take it back so far when we talk about something as simple as good. But we need to. Hence, we're not going to be able to set up government institutions unless the whole is acclimated to the good. And we won't know the good until we know the true. And we won't know what is true and correct unless we know what is in the first place. So that's why this course was set up in that way. And also notice we did not arrive really at any conclusions, right? Because at the end of the day, we just looked at different perspectives in each of these ways of thinking. So you might be asking yourself then, what's the point, right? And the point is that this was an introductory class, which means that this is just going to start your questioning for yourself, right? And so the hope is that you would continue on in, your own life questioning. And all we did, I hope, was to open doors. But even if you forget everything that this class offered, I'm hoping that there is one skill that you can take with you. And I know that some of you definitely picked this up because I could tell by the change in some of your writing, right? Those little summary papers, the first couple, tended to be a little odd, maybe a little, and by the end of it, you're starting to figure it out. And that is Descartes' 4 rules. Do you remember the 4 rules we talked about? The 4 rules for the direction of mind. And in it, Descartes gives us some advice on how to come at a problem, how to tackle something. So this represents the cloud of WTF. Surely, if you did the readings in this course, especially the early ones, you would probably read a paragraph or two, a page or two, and go, oh my God, what is that guy saying? And a lot of times when we're at a loss, you get the big gray cloud, right? Because I could ask you, okay, any questions? And you're like, I don't even know where to start, right? I don't know where to begin. Well, if you remember these 4 rules, the first one was, don't trust authority. So when you have your cloud here, right, and you want to try to make sense out of it, the first thing you do is not to trust authority. In other words, don't go to secondary sources. In this class, I made a big deal out of, stick to the text, and still a lot of people didn't. And the reason I want you to stick to the text is because if you don't stick to the text, then you're never going to solve this problem. Because if someone else solves it for you, then you did not understand the problem. Somebody else did. So step 1 is don't trust authority. Step 2 is break the problem up. Right? And he says break it into as many parts as you need to in order to better understand. So you take this big cloud, which you cannot deal with, and you break it into smaller parts, which you can deal with. It's sort of like digestion, right? That's exactly what your whole digestive system does. If you want to eat a hamburger, you can't swallow it whole. First, you chew it into pieces, right? You take bites, you chew it, you swallow it. Your stomach, analyzes it, you could say, even more into smaller pieces, etc., etc. So you got to break it up. How do you break it up? You understand each paragraph at a time. You understand each section at a time. And hopefully you make your marginal notes in the textbook so that you understand little chunks. Then you put it together with the little pieces first. So when you understand the little pieces, right? So you're like, oh, okay, now I understand this. 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 Then you can go back and you can reconstruct the whole because now you understand the pieces. In this regard, systems of philosophy are kind of like Legos, right? And each of these little things is a piece of Lego, and you have to make sure you isolate that piece of Lego and understand it before you can build it into something larger. Then lastly, go back and review, is what he said. So make sure you didn't miss anything. So then you go back, you're like, okay, I got all the pieces. And when we do the pieces, review all the spots, that's because we want to make sure we're not missing any key factors of what the author said. It'd be sort of like, signing terms and conditions without understanding terms and conditions. Well, then if you sign it without reviewing and understanding, then you really don't have a clue. So you're still stuck in this WTF land. So anyways, what's the skill I'm hoping that you can take from this course for the rest of your life? Is that you can force yourself to understand things, because you have to. Truth is complicated. There are many perspectives, but more and more we live in a society that wants to do everything for you so you don't have to force yourself to understand. But like anything, you're not going to be faster at running unless you push your body past its limits. You're not going to be stronger unless you lift more weights and push yourself past your body's limits. You're also not going to be a well-rounded intellectual unless you push your understanding past its limits. And that's been the whole point of this course. And some of you have done that admirably and excellent. And once you do so, then as Immanuel Kant once said, sapere aude, dare to think. And this has been the hallmark of the Enlightenment. Dare to think for yourself. This entire republic of ours is built on the ability of people to understand and to make choices, to dare to think for themselves. Anyway, that's been the overall point of the course. And I hope it was valuable to you, and I hope you learned something, and keep thinking.